Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Chaotic Tavern. My name is Dan, and I'll be your bartender for this evening. You know, as someone who's been in the RPG scene for a long time, I've discovered my fair share of in-game pet peeves. Most of these are just minor annoyances, but some of them fill me with urges so violent that I should probably be on a list somewhere. It can be really frustrating when there's a person at the table who you swear is out to ruin the experience for everybody. Especially if that person is the DM and you're too new to understand that something is going horrifically wrong. Today's story is about a player who, over time, realizes that things at her table aren't quite how they should be, when her DM goes from crappy to downright petty and insufferable. Let's take a look. Today's story, Like a Frog in Boiling Water, a tale of not seeing the red flags from a bad DM due to a lack of experience by alzang00. After binging pretty much all of Crispy's videos while working, I am now keen to share the story of my first D&D game and how only after I started DMing and started watching all the horror stories, I understood that the discomfort I felt was because of a crazy amount of horror story tropes. All in the same game. The characters in this story are the DM, problem, his wife, problem, who I'll call Life Cleric, and the other players including me. 8 total players. First red flag that I essentially just assumed was normal for a year. The story begins about 2 years ago. I had never played D&D, and I met a new friend who invited me to a new D&D game he was starting. The start of the game was okay. Session 0 for character creation and consent forms. Interestingly, no background on the setting or the world. This will become a pattern. We start in a ship, crash, and quickly get tasked to go into a temple to retrieve something. The temple has a few floors. How many floors? Oh, about 5. Each floor has a few encounters and monsters, a few puzzles. It was an okay design. You know, this type of thing you probably think, oh, a nice dungeon. We'll go in, take a few sessions going through it, 4, maybe 5? Well, how about a whole year? Yes, it took a whole year to go through that dungeon. Why, you may ask? Very simple. 7 new players with only 1 experienced player. Roll for everything. No descriptions of anything other than what is blatantly obvious. Want to see what that door looks like? No problem, roll perception. Oh, you have a passive perception of a 14 as a ranger? That's too bad. I don't care for passive skills. Roll low enough and you don't even know that it's a door. How do you progress through a door that you don't know exists? No clue, roll more dice. Maybe someone else will do something and roll a number that is good enough to progress. He wouldn't volunteer a single piece of information or lore that is not behind a roll, and if that roll fails, no failing forward allowed. You are soft locked until you find something else to do. Hey yo OP, quick question my friend. Did we have the same DM? Cause this sounds like we had the same DM. On the off chance we did, ask him how that rash is going. You know, the one he's hiding from his wife. He'll know what it means. Ask it in front of her. Jokes aside, I know it's a bit early for me to be cutting in, but good God do I relate to this. There's been some debate between DMs about passive perception and how it should be applied. Some DMs just straight up don't use it, and they won't tell you that until you're halfway through your second session. I know the idea of making players roll for everything is it's supposed to make the success feel earned. If you're the DM and you spent hours writing up traps and secrets, it can be a little disheartening for the cleric with his passive perception of 25 to see everything just because he walked into the room. So I understand not wanting to just hand wave away all that effort just because a player happens to have the magic number on their sheet. Sometimes having specific treasures or encounters require an active check can really add a bit of excitement. That feeling of a player randomly deciding to roll and being rewarded for it, it's awesome, it's great. But like with most things in life, there has to be a balance. If you're soft blocking your party through RNG, you're making the game unfun. If your players are smart enough to roleplay through a puzzle or a search, that's still them putting in effort to engage with your story. And as a DM, that's really all you can hope for. And trust me, there's nothing more frustrating than looking in a container with no secret compartments and being told to roll to see if I can see what's in there. Somehow that greatsword is completely invisible unless you get the right symbol on that little math rock, even though it's right in front of you, or making players roll to search a dead guy's pocket. That's how you end up hearing players say things like, fine, maybe his wallet's in a different orifice. First problem, pacing. I now know that pacing is one of the most important things DMs have control over. Yes, we would take a while to decide to go somewhere, but if you put a party of 8 players in a dungeon with 5 levels and 4 to 8 doors on each level, how long do you think things will take to progress? He said he was an experienced DM, but even I, having DM'd a couple of one-shots and a couple of short campaigns, know that this is absolutely crazy. He said at the end he expected us to have gone through the dungeon in about 2 months with weekly 2-hour sessions. I.e., he had 10 months to realize his plans were not going to plan and adjust the rest of the dungeon to give us a good game. He chose not to. At that point, I assigned my lack of ability to interact and do things that are cool to my character choices. Maybe I wasn't good at RPing yet, and my character was too difficult to interact with the world, her being someone who was slightly reclusive and too focused on her idea of justice, although her idea of it was twisted. So I asked to have a new character. It was at this point in time that the experienced player quit. I think he recognized the red flags and took the break in the story as an opportunity to dip. I created a Grung Artificer, and that's where the frog part of the story comes in. He allows us to pick a few magic items, and being a Grung, I chose the Endless Water for being able to stay hydrated, plus 2 combat items. Her backstory was that she was afraid of death for her and her comrades, so she was supposed to be a support tank. I then crafted a character whose traits made sense with her backstory, while still making sense mechanically. We were using point buy, so I put the points where it made sense for my character. Her being an armorer with a shield and using her infusions on herself at the level we were, 7. She sat at a comfortable 21 AC. The first time I receive a pretty high hit and said that it didn't hit me, he scolded me for min-maxing. I literally ignored a full magical item just to have an item that allows me to be wet so I could be a cute frog, and I built my character using no homebrew or class combinations. Just point buy and standard things that you get with level ups. But I let it go. I thought maybe I should have gone for more RP or story-oriented things. So I started to try to do more story stuff. I started RPing her interested in the mechanics of death and describing what she looked like when she was doing things. Every time I would try to describe something in combat, or even just an interaction out of combat, the response would be, "So, are you doing X or no?" And I'm like, okay, so I'm scolded for building my character coherently. I can't RP my character without rolling dice, so I guess we're just supposed to keep rolling dice without caring what's affecting them? Okay, so I just want to say, OP, your character is amazing. We support our cute frog mechanics in this household. We do not, however, support your DM. And honestly, maybe that's the problem here. The Dungeon Master sounds insecure. I don't mean that as an insult, I mean it genuinely. He doesn't want players able to just walk through encounters or traps by using common sense or basic rules. He doesn't want your character blocking high attack rolls, which is literally what you are designed to do. The fact he's calling you a min-maxer or trying to condense every aspect of role-playing to a single dice roll, not gonna lie, that sounds like someone who wants to be taken super seriously while acting like a complete clown. And then there's the dumbing down of your actions. Sure, not every attack roll needs an in-depth monologue about your expert style, your graceful maneuvers, or the 85 scenes it takes for you to whip your katana out of your asshole. But for God's sakes, DM, let your players gush about their characters and add some flavor once in a while. Because reducing someone's roleplay to a simple you do thing or don't do thing makes it sound like you could not care less about exciting your players and letting them have some fun. It's important to understand the intention and the purpose behind those actions, and letting your players describe them can go a long way to helping you get the idea behind what they're doing. Other than a couple extra seconds of dialogue, you're not losing out on anything by letting players add a bit of context and whimsy to their fucking fantasy dice game. you prick. This entire time, another problem has been bothering me. We've been playing for over a year. The Life Cleric hasn't cast a single healing spell. Through DM Fiat, she also gained 3 times as much gold as anyone in the party, and she is literally a main character in the story. As in, her backstory is part of the main plot. Remember, DM's wife. And she does not know how any of her spells work, she doesn't track spell slots, and over 3 times has tried to say that she essentially has 10 times as much gold as she should have, above her extra gold. I mean, her power is countered by her incompetence in using that power, but it still annoyed me given the comments I received about min-maxing. Oh, and the DM had said that the campaign would not include any of our characters' backstory. It would be a setting where our characters would just go through the world and experience what was going on, which is fine if that's what you want for the game, but of course, that doesn't apply to her. They would also have minutes of RP between her PC and other NPCs, just showering her PC with praise. While if I tried to say more than a few sentences of RP for my character, I had to roll or stop. This is when I started DMing. I learned you are supposed to describe things to your players. I learned that you are supposed to let them do things that are inherently easy to do. I learned that you have control over every single thing in the world and that all you need to do is talk to your players and figure out how to have fun with them. I thought, okay, so maybe I'll suggest another session 0. Ours was over a year ago, and maybe we didn't set expectations, and that's why our game is in such disarray. Maybe if we just have a conversation on how we'd like our sessions to go, we'll figure out a way that we can all have fun together. So I talked to the DM, asked him to set up a session 0. His answer? Oh, if your consent sheet has changed, you can just send me another one. Or if you want to create a new character, you don't need to do the session 0, you can just do it outside the session. I respond by trying to explain how we've played for over a year, so we're more experienced and know better how D&D works, and I think it'll benefit us to have this conversation. This goes back and forth a few times. He does not, in fact, benefit from the conversation, and fails to understand that I don't just want to update my character or consent forms and actually want to discuss the game and how to have fun together. He does not ever even mention doing another session 0 to the rest of the party. Then we start doing online sessions primarily. We mostly use Theater of the Mind, which, remember, no descriptions aside from what you roll, and in battles, he whips out a gridded map and a camera and draws with a Sharpie. The problem: this means we cannot position things ourselves, and he will just place things for us, and will sometimes just place things kinda bad and ignore what we want. It's also sometimes very hard to understand what is going on with his drawn maps and lack of descriptions. I mentioned that maybe we could use a simple VTT like Owlbear Rodeo to try and make things easier for us to understand and interact, at least by having a pointer and being able to move the tokens during battles. He refuses. His reasoning? He already has his map and things he bought physically, so he won't do it because he already has it. In sum, it doesn't matter, you are not enjoying this because I prefer it this way. Now that I mention this last sentence is probably the through line over all of it. It is at this point the frog boils. I finally understand it is impossible to have coherent fun in a game where there is no communication. How can the game be coherent if the GM won't simply step up and try to make sure everyone's enjoying their time and understanding the world? I retire my grung, her fear of death being too focused for a game where backstory doesn't matter and the GM can't direct the party if his life depended on it. I don't want to leave the group. After all, they are people I'm okay being around now after a while, and if I stop playing, I'll likely stop seeing them. I created a new character. He's just a guy. He'll follow people around and try to have fun. No motivation, no nothing. He'll fit better. TLDR, DM doesn't care for pacing, makes them roll for everything, has too many players. His wife's PC is the only one in the group to be included in the story. DM refuses to communicate or adapt. I am too afraid to lose friends to leave. Oh good, the old whoever touches the DM's pee-pee gets everything trope. I've never had to experience this myself, but I can only imagine how infuriating it must be. It's one thing to give a little extra flavor to your significant other at the table, especially if it's subconsciously. It's another to tell everyone that they're just here to watch your girlfriend be the center of attention. And while I can't fully glean what the girlfriend's reaction to this was, I do know that this can actually make the partner in question kind of uncomfortable, along with everyone else. So I just want to say, OP, if I ever run an online campaign with random folks I meet on the internet, consider yourself formally invited. If you're still in that game, because I can't tell if you are from this post, get out of that mess. No D&D is better than bad D&D, and trust me, you deserve better than to keep attending these weekly torture sessions. Your mental health will thank you. But to our viewers, what do you think? Should OP just cut that game off like a diseased appendage, or maybe try and hammer the problems into the DM's thick skull? I know where I fall on the matter. In any case, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like and consider subscribing. A huge thanks to my backers on Patreon. You help make content like this possible, and I'll always appreciate it. If you want to see more of my content, I have a link to my main channel in the description. I'll see you all again for another round here in the Chaotic Tavern. Until next time.